Welcome back to the Draft Crush Show. Welcome back, Draft Crush Show in general. We've been off for a couple of weeks. I apologize about that. Schedules happen, life happens, and a great point in case of that is my co-host, Edgar Salmingo Jr. will not be here today. He had a schedule conflict, so you're stuck with me, at least for this intro part. But we do have a fantastic guest today to talk about four really intriguing prospects. I'm going to go ahead and bring them up without waiting any longer. Antwan Staley, a beat writer and columnist for the New York Daily News, covering the New York Jets. Antwan, how are you, man?
I'm good to be with you, Ricky. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. So look, I said you cover the New York Jets, but I know that you've done a lot more than that. Why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, where you got your start, where you kind of, began with this NFL journey, and where they can find you now.
Well, I've been covering sports for a while, probably like the last 20 years or so. But NFL, I've been doing it since 2012. Like, I started covering the Dolphins. I'm originally from North Carolina, but covered the Dolphins, covered a little bit of Panther stuff, but mostly Dolphins and Jets stuff, and started covering the Jets in 22. So yeah, I've been around NFL circles for the last like almost 15 years now. So it
Yeah.
doesn't seem crazy it's been that long, but yeah, I mean, I started out doing baseball, so that was kind of fun, but there's a lot of games in baseball, so I don't necessarily
A
always
lot.
like covering it, although I love the sport. But yeah, 162 games, yeah, that's a lot. But
That's a lot of
yeah, I
work,
mean,
man.
so that's kind of how I was started. Yeah, yeah, it definitely is because yeah, you're writing lot more articles than you are in football.
Right. That's almost every single day during baseball season, you're doing something, at least one or two, right?
Like three,
So
probably, like about three
right,
articles a day, really.
right, right. I'm glad that you brought up too that you're a North Carolina native because there's an interesting thing here, Antwan. When you look at these prospects that we're going to talk about today, that you kind of have like circled on your radar, and I'm assuming these are like first round targets, right, for the New York Jets, guys
Yeah.
that you like. Um, I also think that a lot of them, well, at least three of them recently, have been linked to the Carolina Panthers. So it's not just Jets fans that can get something out of this one today. I think the Panthers fans can listen to you kind of break down these three prospects as well and what you like about them. Should we just go ahead and get right into this, man, and talk about the
Yeah,
four
let's
that
do
you
it.
like today? All right.
Yeah, let's
So
do
look,
it.
first name that we're going to talk about. This is one of the most polarizing names in the NFL draft class, I think, because I have
Oh
seen,
yeah.
some of the most respected names, Anton, like Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler, some of these top dogs, Todd McShay. They've got this guy's like a top 5, top 10 prospect. What is your overall feelings on Jalen Walker, the linebacker or edge player out of Georgia?
I think it depends on how you view him in the league. Like, some people view him as an off-ball linebacker. I think some people view him as a edge rusher. I think if you viewed him as a off-ball linebacker, then maybe your grade is a little bit lower. Just simply because the D might not be as much as compared to an edge rusher, which I think everybody, even if you have an edge rusher, it's like you can never
Mm-hmm.
have too many pass rushers. So
Right.
and to see what he did at Georgia, I think he was more of a Swiss Army knife, to be honest with you. He did a lot of different things there. And not only just rush the passer, but he also can stay with running backs and tight ends and even receivers at times in the passing game too. And I think that really what made him special too. And just to get a guy like that, they can they're so versatile, and you can use him a lot of different ways there. If you need a creative defensive coordinator that can unlock some of the talents that he has that we haven't
Mm-hmm.
even seen, I
Right.
think a guy like Jalen Walker could be really, really special in the league.
Do you think that versatility is going to be like a double-edged sword for him, though? Because I'm almost of the thought process that, and we have Brooks Austin, who covers the Georgia Bulldogs for SI on now. We had him on the show, and he kind of alluded to this point that they asked him to do so much, and like his responsibilities were so vast, and like it was a snap by snap basis that he was playing different positions. So he had to have this knowledge, right? This like tank in his head of knowing exactly what he was supposed to be doing in different alignments, different snaps in every single game. Do you think that could almost muddy it up? Is there a possibility that letting him focus primarily on one, right? Like, you don't want to take away what makes him special with the versatility, but letting him hone in on one department kind of as like his mainstay, and then using him in sub packages or in specific scenarios in the other way. Do you think that is something that maybe an NFL team would look into as well?
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's just all about the fit too. I mean, I think it's
Hmm.
going to be just dependent on. I know a lot of people have talked about him going to Carolina potentially too
Right.
as well. So I think that could be a potentially really good fit, and especially with that defense and what they like to do too, and then some of the
Hmm.
skill position players that they have on that side of the ball there. Yeah, it's going to depend on it's the team that he goes to. I think a team. I actually thought the Jets might be looking into him too. And at some point, I think they might have, but they have so many other needs on their team, and then also they
Right.
shot Jamie and Sherwood too as well. So I think that kind of takes them out the sweeps that's there. But I just think it's all about the fit, and it's all about the coaching, and just kind of what they have planned for somebody with the skill set of him. But it kind of goes back to, I guess, the quote is like master of what is it, master a lot of skills, or just
Right.
master of one skill, or just being, I forgot the
Yeah.
exact what it is.
It was a jack of all trades, master of none. Is
Yeah,
that the one?
yes, yes, like something to that effect there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's good to be him to be a master at one thing that he does really well, and I feel like he rushes the passes really well.
Really
But
well.
you ask him to do a lot of different things too. Like, just because he's rushing the passer doesn't necessarily preclude him from being out there in coverage. Like we've seen in other teams that have like rush schedules in college too as well. So yeah, I think you can use him in
100%.
a lot of different ways.
Yep, I agree. So you say that you think that it kind of takes the Jets out, right, because of their free agent
Yeah,
signings and just their bevy of needs. If the Jets were
yeah.
to take a chance on Jalen, though, how do you see him used in that specific defense? Do you think that they would use him more as an edge rusher, or do you think they would try to make him more of the off-ball backer?
I think considering they have Quincy Williams and they have Jamin Sherwood already, I think they would probably use him more of an edge there, especially with he got Will McDonald there, who had a really
Mm,
breakthrough 2024 season.
yep.
Also had Jermaine, you got Jermaine Johnson coming off of Achilles injury. You never know how people react to coming off Achilles injuries. It could be a little bit slow coming off that injury, and
Hmm.
having a guy like him would take some pressure off Jermaine, where you have three guys that can rotate throughout the course of a defense. And even you could put them all three out there at the same time and do like a
Right.
NASCAR type of package too, which would be just a bit of a nightmare for defenses. I mean, for all
And
opposing offenses, excuse me.
And that's what the game is, right? You're trying to make it more difficult for your opponent. So I
Yeah.
that's a great point, man. Yeah, I think that you bring a guy like this onto your roster and you just say, look, he adds an element, right? And he's got the intangibles, the leadership. He adds this juice though on the defensive side of the football that there's just no reason to overthink it, in my opinion.
Yeah,
All
just
right,
some
cool.
players you just draft and just let them go. Just let them do what they do like best, and then you can
Right.
try to go off of that.
If they're great football players, you bring them in. That's what you want on your team is great football players. So yeah, it
Yeah,
makes a ton of
sometimes
sense.
I think sometimes people overcomplicate things with football, but
Yep.
sometimes like it's simple to the point where this is what they were really good at in college. Allow them
Right.
to do that same thing coming into the league, at least to start out with. And then
If you
once
got
team
a guy
adjusts, then you can, take it from there.
100%. If you got a guy that makes a quarterback's life uncomfortable and difficult, you should want that at the next level. Like that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with having that. And maybe you don't know exactly how you deploy it, but you figure that out. That's one of those good problems, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah, it's never again like you never have too many pass rushers. Never. You could
right,
have two,
right.
three on the roster. Like, nah, you always want more.
You need a bucket of them nowadays in the NFL.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of pass rushers, the guys on the other side are just as important in the NFL. We talked about Jalen Walker being a polarizing prospect. How about Will Campbell, too, man? I mean, this guy, I think that if I remember correctly, he had the shortest wingspan of any offensive tackle at the NFL combine in history. We know that the arm length is something that gets talked about a lot here in Carolina. We're very familiar with that. We drafted Brady Christensen, who was a left tackle out of BYU, and he never saw a left tackle here in the NFL, basically, unless it was an injury situation, because of the arm threshold. And I think that it's a real thing. I don't have a problem with it, but I think sometimes we also do what you just spoke about, Antwan, where that's overlooking things and making things more complicated. Will Campbell's a really good football player, and he's been a left tackle for years at LSU, and he's performed at a high level. What are your overall thoughts on Will Campbell? And why is he one of the draft crushes for you in this cycle?
Yeah, I just think he's a good football player. I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk about the arm lift, and I think his arms measured out a little bit longer at his
Hmm.
pro day. I think it was like close to like 34 or somewhere around there. But
Yeah.
I again like I look at the tape. That's basically what it is. Like people want to talk about intangibles and all that stuff too. Uh, just draft the guy because he is like a talent. Like I thought he was one of the best tackles in football last year. I know him and Emory Jones were like on the same on opposite sides. I thought both of them were
Mhm.
really solid players. And Campbell is just a beast. Like he is. I think he just quick transitioning to his stance there. He has really good body control there. He has strength that he showed there too as well. I think like I said, the only negative you could probably talk about is the on lift. And then,
Right.
I don't even think that's a big deal. Like if you feel like he can't play tackle, you can put him out there guard at some point too. And I think he will be a 10, 12-year starter in the league. So wherever you
Absolutely.
put him, whether it be a guard, whether it be tackle, I think he's going to be a tremendous pro. And I think he could be a, multi-time all pro bowl type of player.
And that versatility to be able to kick inside if for some reason it doesn't work out, on the outside, that's a tremendous asset to have, especially if you're going to allocate a high draft pick to bring this guy
Correct.
in. You talk about his strength. That's the thing that stood out for me, right, on the tape. First of all, his punch technique that he has. I mean, this dude will wallop you. He'll completely displace a defender
Yeah.
when you're coming at him with his two-hand punch. Super powerful grip too, right? Like once he gets the paws on you, good luck getting away
It's
from
over.
him. Yeah, it's a wrap, man. He got a little bit of an upright stance in the way that he approaches it, and I think that some of that may even be that almost hyper awareness of his arm length, that it kind of keeps him at bay and keeps him from leaning as much, I think is what I kind of gathered from watching him. But when you talk about his run blocking, I mean, that's where this guy's going to make his money. This dude is a mauler. I mean, his explosiveness, you talk about him being a good athlete too. He had a
Yeah.
great 40 time. I believe his broad jump and vertical were also very impressive as far as, percentile for offensive tackle. So he's got the explosiveness to reach that second level as a run blocker. He could pull or get to the backside blocks, in some movements, which again is a great skill if you're going to move him over to guard. What do you think? What does he add to the New York Jets specifically if they were to bring him in? Does he kind of fill a major need for that roster as well?
Yeah, they need a right tackle. So yeah, they definitely they can use him like immediately there. And like I think he's a plug and play guy. You plug him in, and then I think you don't have to necessarily worry about him. And you also have Olo Fashanu from Penn State, who ended up having
Hmm.
a really good rookie season last year. And you got your bookend tackles for the next, hopefully the next decade there. So I think he would be an instant upgrade too. And one thing I also do like too that I didn't mention that
Hmm.
he can reach that second level as a blocker
Hmm.
too, and it's make some do some damage there. Something that not a lot of blockers can do, but he can definitely do that and show the speed to be able to get his paws on defend opposing players that way too.
I didn't ask you this about Jalen, but now that we're talking about it, I was about to ask you if Elijah Vera Tucker is still on the
Yeah.
roster there in New York. He
Yeah,
is,
he's
right?
going into the
Okay.
last year of his contract. So yeah, I mean
Right.
that's why I think it makes sense for the Jets to do it in a couple of folds. One, they could plug him in at right tackle, and then
Hmm.
let's say AVT, leaves in free agency. You can put him at right guard, you put him at right guard, and then you could just
Hmm.
draft another right tackle. It should be, or find another one in free agency next year.
Hmm. That's interesting too. I didn't really think much about him going to the right side, Antoine, but that makes good sense, especially when you look at maybe where he struggled a bit more. And I use the word struggle lightly with Will Campbell because he didn't struggle a whole ton, right? Like he played pretty solid ball for the past
Yeah,
4 years. Um, but the speed element does give him
correct.
more issue than the power element, right? Especially from a rushing standpoint.
Yeah,
So I think if you move him on that right side, maybe he doesn't face the premier pass rusher for each team every single week and let him get his, feet underneath him. We know that defenses move guys around. It's not like they only
yeah,
rush their best pass rusher on the blind side, but for the most time, that is what you see. So
correct.
that's a really good point. I like that. And the
Yeah,
Elijah Vera Tucker part, man, that's multiple timelines, right? That's what the front offices are tasked with. They've got to have a
correct.
contingency plan.
Correct. Yeah, and I go back to your point about the edge rushers. Like most of your power guys are on that right side, as opposed to
Hmm.
unless you just got a straight up freak like a Miles Garrett, then you
Right.
got power and speed, which is this is a rare. Like most guys don't have that, but yeah, you're
Yeah.
facing more power guys on the right side as opposed to more of a speed type of element on that left side.
Right. So if we're talking about, and I didn't ask you this is what I was getting to too, and I was going to say, do you have a player comp for what Will Campbell reminds you of, or Jalen Walker, if you want to go back to that one too? Jalen Walker is one of the ones that I think everyone's having a really hard time with because of the size, right? Like the play
Yeah.
style. I said something the other day, and it wasn't really a player comp, so I don't want this to be taken wildly out of context, but I'd love your take on this. When people talk about being scared of this hybrid defender like a Jalen Walker, there's different kinds of hybrids, though, right? This isn't a guy that you're
Correct.
talking about being a linebacker or a safety where he's on his own in an island in the back half of the coverage of a defense. You're talking about a linebacker or a defensive lineman, essentially, right? A guy who's playing on the front. He's in the box. He's closer to the ball regardless. James Harrison was kind of what I spoke about, and not
Yeah.
necessarily because I think he's going to be James Harrison, but that frame reminds me a little bit. The playing with his hair on fire, just the ability to. And, James had a couple great interceptions in his career. People forget about that. He wasn't a bum in coverage. He had some pick sixes. He was proficient. He was good at it. He was just smaller, dude. I think he was like 6'1".
Yeah.
But he's built like a brick house.
Correct. I think more like a rich man's Cal Van Noy. I think that's kind of where
Ooh,
I've
yeah.
alluded to because Van Noy's done a lot of different things in the league. There, I mean, he's rushed the passer. He's been off ball. Like he's played a lot of different roles, especially in particular with the Patriots. So I can see a guy
Hmm.
like Jalen Walker doing something similar.
I
Will
like
is a little
that.
bit like I'm trying to think of one for Will, but I can't necessarily think of one per se. I think of
Yeah.
guys that are like very he has some game of a lot of different guys there, but I can't think of
Mhm.
just one particular player that he reminds me of.
Fair. No, that's fair. Elijah Vera Tucker was a guy that kind of came to mind almost to an
Yeah,
extent with him, just because that
yeah,
versatility and the proficiency against power more so than speed. So it reminded me a tiny bit. Their body types are a little bit different, I think, like the build wise, obviously, but a little bit of similarities.
yeah. Because Vera Tucker has played every single position
Right.
outside of center. Like
Right.
he plays some left tackle, plays some right tackle there, especially at USC. And
Hmm.
the Jets have asked him to play right tackle at times too, but he's settled in as a guard. Like he wants to play guard, but he can play a
Fair.
lot of different positions. Which you need guys like that on your offensive line, especially when injuries come about, because they're going to come. And when they do, you need the guys that can cross train at a lot of different positions.
Depth of the offensive line has been a plague in the NFL for a long time, man. So if you got a guy that can move about on that line all on his own and can offer you 4 or 5 different positions in case of emergency, that's a great guy to have. We got one here in
Yeah,
Carolina, and Brady Christensen.
correct. You need a guy
Yep,
like you need utility guys. Like you need like
absolutely.
I think you need a couple of them on your team, especially on the offensive line for sure.
And if you're not talking about utility, let's talk about just a dominant guy on the right side. This is my offensive tackle one, and Will Campbell is my second offensive tackle as far as graded out for me. But Armand Membu, man, out of Missouri, this is a
Ooh,
powerful dude, and he's got really good length. Like you see the combine numbers here, like all these measurements that you're seeing on the screen, these are combine official stuff. And you brought up the point that Will Campbell had different measurements. The crazy thing that
yeah,
happened this year, man, I don't know what happened, Antwan, but the measurements at the combine were all off, apparently, by like a half inch or more on most of these arm length and wingspan measurements. So you're starting to see these pro day measurements that are coming in, and it's across the board, or even the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl, all across the board, man. There was variations here. But Armand, 33 and a half, even at the combine, right? Like the dude's got long
yeah,
arms, 82-inch wingspan, a little bit shorter, I guess, than prototypical side at 6'4" and a quarter. But
yeah. I'm not
332
worried about that.
pounds. That don't bother me at all, man.
Yeah, I don't care about that. Yeah, like
Like, what
what
are,
I
what are
care
we
about is like
asking
he's
him?
exactly. I was just gonna say, man, he is like raw strength and just power,
Yeah,
and like he is thick. Like you talk about the height, but you're not moving him. Like that's the
right,
thing. Like you're
right,
not moving somebody like that. He is a thick build, so I don't care.
right.
Like you got the speed rusher, you got the power rusher. That's why a lot of people have him as the tackle one in the draft because
Hmm.
he's just such he causes so many problems for opposing defenses because it's gonna be hard to get around somebody like that, and that's why I
Absolutely.
think I think the Jets will be smart to take somebody like that at 7 if he's available because you got a team like New England at
Mm,
4, especially if they take if let's say the Browns take Abdul Carter and the Giants take Travis Hunter,
Travis Hunter.
then the
Yeah.
Patriots obviously have some needs at tackle. Then I think they're going to take one of the guys, whether it be Campbell or Minbu. Uh, I would think they would take Bembu because I think he is the tackle one in this draft. But they would take Campbell. Then if you're the Jets, you take the other guy. And Bembu, if you can get him at 7, I think that's an absolute steal.
It's a great pick, right? And
Yeah.
it's not a sexy pick, man. People hate seeing their team like take a
Oh, I
right
know.
tackle.
I've heard it
Like
all. I heard it all season. I know.
I was about to say, I'm sure you get a lot of inquiries, right? Or a lot of mailbag questions about, hey, Antoine,
Yeah.
why do you keep talking about offensive linemen when there's guys like Tet McMillan that we want to talk about constantly, right? Like we want the positional players is what fans want to talk about more than anything.
Correct. They're ball watchers. Most people are ball watchers, and that's
Yeah,
by just natural. I understand
yeah,
that, but when I tell people this, as long as the team gets it right, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter who they take. Like it is. I understand you want a nice toy. You want a nice shiny
yeah.
toy. You want the Corvette that's coming out the garage and everything like that. But sometimes it's good to take the Subaru because it's
There
reliable
you
and you
go.
know it's gonna last for 10 plus years. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Man, that's a great analogy. I love it, Antoine. I don't know if you know anything about my style when I try to do this stuff, but I'm an analogy guy. Like that's what I try to do. So that one hit home for me. I was
Yeah,
literally when you started talking about the Corvette and you're talking about the speed racer, right? I'm sitting there thinking to myself, and I'm like, yeah, but every now and then you need a pickup truck though to move all the rubble, right? And that's
correct.
exactly what these offensive linemen do. And what have we seen, man, in the NFL? Offensive and defensive lines, trench play, that's how you
Eagles.
build a winner. The Eagles, man,
Eagles.
even the Lions to an extent, right? With their
Hmm.
offensive line. That was their identity. Everyone talks about how
Correct.
creative and smart Ben Johnson was. Couldn't have done it without one guy specifically on that offensive line who happens to be a right tackle, Panay Sewell. And that's
Yeah,
a guy
exactly.
that Armand reminds me a little bit of. He's got a
It's
little bit of
funny.
that game.
I said that too. It's funny you mentioned that. Aaron Glenn and when Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn came at the same time in 21, along with Ben Johnson,
Mm,
their first draft pick was Penny Sewell from
that's
Oregon.
right. Yep.
And that's the comp too. Like that's somebody that's member is a lot like. So I think that's why it makes sense for the Jets to build within the trenches. Like they saw it then, and
Mm-hmm.
it's paid dividends like for Detroit too. And that's why you have to build your
100%.
team. Look at the team like the Eagles. Like they build their team, whether it be defensive line, whether it be offensive line, they have that trenches set. Well, that way they don't
Absolutely.
worry about everything. And they're able to drop in a guy like a Saquon Barkley, or they're able to drop
Mm-hmm.
in like Jalen Hurts or whoever else they may be. Because when you have your trenches set, then I think you can do different things on your offense and defense there that sets it everything up. So that's where it starts.
Completely
I think
agree.
that's the foundation of your team. And like that's why I think
100%.
you have to have that foundation set. Otherwise, you're not. I don't think you're going anywhere without
Right.
a really good offensive line or defensive line play for that matter.
100%. Look, I'll bring it back to Carolina again before we move on to this final prospect. But we drafted Bryce Young, and there was a lot of
Yeah,
talk about, hey, drop him in. He's a point guard. He's going to distribute the ball with routes and win us championships. We don't need good players. But we didn't have anything in front of him. We had no
correct.
protection, and he just got
Or
blitzed. He still
receivers.
had or receivers. Yeah. Hey, look, now you're starting to dig a little deep, Antoine. I know that we didn't have anything. I know we had a bear covered,
Look, man,
but
I'm from
we
Carolina, so I understand, man. Like, yeah,
it's a struggle, right? But we
yeah,
did, you know what? We did have Chuba Hubbard on the roster, but Chuba Hubbard
yeah,
also didn't have the offensive line that we do right
correct,
now. That
correct.
interior of the offensive line, we fortified that. All of a sudden, you're looking at a pretty competent offensive line that can open up possibilities and you can evaluate your offense. So Amar Membu, like I just think the world of this guy. We talk about his size and all of that and the height. Look, I'm not asking him to look on the top shelf and tell me what's up there, right? Like, we don't need that. Like, that's not what you're asking him to do to pick something out of the highest cabinet. Like, he's a good football player. He's a terrific football player. And in the lower body strength that he has really stands out, and that's something that he can anchor. He can move guys left and right. He's really quick getting into his sets as well, which I
Yeah,
appreciate about a guy his size. You don't catch him slipping very often right off the ball. So I think that that's a really good pick. You got well, I guess about to ask about a comp, but I guess we kind of cleared that, didn't we,
the
with the
city.
Panay
So
Sewell?
I had a scout compare him to a young Dwayne Brown. So there's that
Ooh,
too.
ooh,
Like
I
Dwayne
like that
Brown,
one.
like he's very stout, very hard to move there, big body guy. So yeah, I was like, yeah, I could definitely see that.
That's a great one. I hadn't even thought about that one. That one's a terrific one. Shout out to
Yeah.
that scout right there. All right, let's get to this final guy. Now, this guy, look, I feel like you almost chose all polarizing guys because there are wide opinions about these guys. That
Oh
makes for a
yeah.
really good show. So I do appreciate that. Um, Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end. All right, so I'll give my little like elevator pitch of like my initial thoughts on Tyler Warren, and then I want you to take the mic and let me know what you think. Tyler Warren, I think, is a very versatile piece. I think that he's a much better athlete than you would expect from a almost 6'6", 260-ish pound guy playing tight end. He's got pretty nimble feet. He doesn't have outstanding speed. He doesn't need it. He's got good speed. He's got more than adequate speed, but it's just not burner speed, right? Like he's not going to run past you, but he will run through you or jump
Oh
over
yeah.
you. Um, Better hands this year than 2023. I thought that he shored up some
Yeah.
of those drop issues that he had. It became that security blanket. Now, Penn State definitely manufactured touches for him.
Oh yeah.
His volume went way up, but that's not a problem either. Like I don't see why that should be a negative against him. Is that he was manufactured looks? That's what you do if you have a weapon. Like if you've got a really good player, don't you manufacture ways to get him the ball and get the ball in his
You
hands?
should. Yeah,
You
I mean,
should.
I actually was surprised, like, when I was looking at the stats, I was like, I had no idea he had over 100 catches.
Yeah.
I had no clue because I mean, I watched a lot of Penn State games, but it seemed
Mhm.
like it was more like 80 maybe catches,
Yeah.
but I was like,
Yep.
well, I guess if you add in the playoff and everything like that, then I guess it makes sense. But yeah, it's
Right.
kind of like these guys are essentially these college guys are playing like NFL schedules now, especially with the playoffs.
Mhm.
They're playing like upwards to 15, 16, 17 games at times. So yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, but I don't have a problem with that too. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's can line up as an like inline blocker, also line up in the slot too. He did a lot of that in Penn State too.
Mhm.
Did some blocking. Like, it wasn't always clean, some of the
Right.
blocking, but you could tell that he's an athlete. Like, he played three sports
Mhm.
in high school. Could tell he played basketball because it reminds me like him going up to get passes. It reminds me of a power forward going to get a
For
rebound.
sure.
That's kind of what
For
it
sure.
reminds. Like, I was like, yeah, it's kind of like when Jimmy Graham. Not no, although they're different players, but
Right.
Jimmy did a little bit of that too because you could see him just going up to get the ball at the highest point, and then you see that with Tyler. Like, those guys coming from the basketball background, but he has a lot to like. I think he's more like Kittle than Buck
Mhm.
Bowers was.
Mhm.
Buck Bowers more of a guy that you just line up in the slot and just go, and then a tremendous player too. But I
Sure.
think Tyler is more of your Kittle, like inline, traditional type of tight
Yep.
end. I think it's been some questions about his speed there,
Mhm.
especially at the NFL level. But I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. I think he's going to be a really tremendous player moving
Yep.
forward, and somebody that the Jets are also really looking at too, because they definitely need tight end help after letting Tyler Conklin go to the Chargers.
Great point. Great point. When you bring up George Kittle, the thing that also comes to mind, because you talked about like his versatility alignment wise, right? Like you line
Yeah,
him up in line, you line him up on the slot. Hell, he took spots outside as the X, right? Like
correct.
like he can line up, and he's been aligned in the backfield, and that's something that we see San Francisco do with George Kittle at times, where
Yeah,
you line him up almost in that H back type of role, right? Where you could kind of have him blocking from the backfield, and that kind of gives you
hmm
some versatility with a lot of the pre-snap motion that we see in the NFL. Let him run through and be your C gap blocker as
yeah,
well. That's something that he could do. And I think that's something that he's better suited because Antwan, you brought up not the cleanest blocking. That is something that I have noted is that he's a willing blocker. He wants to block
yeah,
and it's adequate, but he doesn't maintain and like sustain blocks for as long as you would necessarily hope.
correct.
But if you could kind of make him more of the collision blocker and the move blocker and just to get in the way and interfere in a way
Yeah,
and let him use that size, that is something I think that he could kind of excel on. The note that I have on him, like my overall note that I wrote when I was grading him, it just says big football player, old school blend of traits and on field
yeah,
identity with the versatility to be used in new school schematics, right? Like this
correct.
is an old school, bring your lunch pail to work, blue
Yes.
collar kind of guy, but you get to use him in all of these really cool, creative ways that these new coaches seem to be in love with.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Like, he reminds me of a 80s, 90s tight end,
Yeah,
but playing today's world,
right.
which you could do a lot of different creative things with him. Like I say, back then, like, tight ends would just line up basically in one particular area. Like,
Yeah.
now, like, they're lined up in the slot, they're lined on the outside. You mentioned H back too as well. I had to talk about the scout that I talked to. The same scout she said he reminded him of Greg Olson. Now, I think Greg Olson is a little bit faster
Hmm.
than
Right.
Tyler Warren, but I could see a little bit of the comps there too, especially the
Yeah.
way that they separate and can get the ball, like, get the ball at their highest point. And Greg was, I always felt like Greg was just so underrated. Like, he was just so
So
smooth as a
underrated.
tight end there. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people, especially on those Carolina teams too. I mean, a lot of people talked about Cam and just the defense in particular, especially
Yep.
2015. But I mean, Greg was like his security blanket. And
He was
that
an
really got
offense.
him out
Yeah.
of a lot of situations, a lot of bad situations. Like he looked towards Greg, and Greg was just that horse and
Yeah.
that exceptional as a tight end, and he did it all. And he
Yeah.
wanted to do it all. He's a very smart football player, which I think Tyler Warren is also a very
Yep.
smart football player as well.
High football intelligence. I agree completely there. Former quarterback. So that tells you a
Yes.
little bit about the way that he can read a defense and know where he's supposed to be and know the soft spots to find, that vulnerability of a defense is a really underrated part. And I want to give you credit too for that Jimmy Graham thing because I understand exactly where you're going with that. He's not the athlete that Jimmy Graham is
No.
necessarily, but in contested catch situations and as a red zone threat, Tyler Warren will absolutely moss somebody, right? Like he will
Right.
go up over you. He will pluck that ball out of the air the way that we saw Jimmy Graham. And unfortunately, as Panthers fans, I saw a lot of that, right? Over years.
Yeah.
We saw Jimmy Graham was a menace to Carolina Panthers fans. So that hit home with me when you put that one out there too.
Yeah, like you want those guys that are super athletic. I mean, that's just kind of I didn't know
Hmm.
that like initially, and then obviously, doing going through the draft process and doing homework, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. This guy played basketball because now I could kind of see it. Like, yeah, he plays that basketball, just kind of
Yep.
laying, that body, and also just the way that he plays football style. Like, not everybody, not all receivers and tight ends do that, but you can
Yep.
definitely see that in his game.
And you mentioned him doing everything. We'll end it with this one. You look at those total touchdowns there on the screen. He had 7 receiving touchdowns in 2023. In 2024, he had 8 receiving touchdowns, but he also had 4 rushing and a passing
Yes.
touchdown. I mean, this dude is, you talk about a Swiss Army knife. He could do it, man. Now, you don't have to always ask him to. I wouldn't necessarily trot him out there to be your quarterback, but a quarterback sneak, maybe you run one of those odd little wildcat type formations and you got him back there receiving that snap. It's gonna put some pressure on that defense to
I,
figure
I
out what the
gotta
hell you're doing.
I got a quick way to use him, and somebody might steal this. They listen to it,
Oh,
but put him in a goal line situation, like fourth
hmm,
and one. You put him in like like a fullback traditional role, and then
yeah,
slide him out, and it just happen because when you have a fullback back there, you're like, yeah, they're not gonna catch the ball, but
right,
you
right.
have him out there, you're like, oh, we got to take notice, like this guy's
You got to
back there,
account.
like. Yeah, exactly. So, and then if you have a linebacker on him, then I think that's a mismatch too, and like he can easily catch the ball for a touchdown. So I think
You can.
that would be a good creative way to use them.
I completely agree. You can use him to create advantages, even if you're not targeting him, right? Even
Yeah,
if you're just literally saying, "Hey, look, we just want him on the field." Because defenses have to account for him, and he's a threat one way or another. Whether you're talking about up the seams vertically, or as an outlet, or as a blocker, or as a gadget player, there's just so many ways to use him, man.
correct. And I
Um,
think the Jets are gonna real quick. The Jets are gonna be lean more into the running game, especially with Justin
mm,
Fields. So to have a guy like that that can be yeah, again like not the cleanest blocking, but somebody that's
yeah.
willing to be a blocker, and then also he can block and then pretend like he's gonna block, and then go out as a receiver. I think that would create a lot of matchup problems too for
So,
opposing
so you think
defenses.
he's a very legitimate option there at 7 for the
Oh
Jets?
yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
they're definitely gonna consider. I'm not saying they're gonna take him, but he's
yeah.
definitely in consideration.
Is there a player before I get you out of here and before you tell everyone where they can follow you and find the rest of your work? Is there a player that is not talked about for the Jets very often at that 7 range that you're like, man, they could definitely throw things off on this NFL draft and throw this wrench in it with this player?
I know a lot of people have talked about like Genty from Boise State, but
Mm,
like I gotta go to Coast and Loveland. Like if you want to throw him
ooh,
out there too, another
my tight
another
end
really
one.
exceptional tight end too.
Yeah.
Some people like Tyler Warren, some people like Loveland,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't have a problem if they were to take him. I think he's really starting to get some momentum there, and I wouldn't be surprised if, with all things considered, he became a top 15 pick in the draft. Like he's that
Love
good,
it.
and obviously ran a pro style offense at Michigan, especially under Harbaugh there too as well. So yeah, he's somebody that can really be a really trendsetting player.
Man, and so thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. It's nice to see you again too.
Oh yeah,
We ran into each other down in Spartanburg. That's how I met you
we did.
for the Panthers training camp, and you were extremely kind, man. And like I'm new into doing all the content creating. I just like talking football, man. Like that's really my
So do
jam.
I.
And you sat there and you hung out, man. You talked ball with me for a while, and I just wanted to say that I appreciate that very much, man. I think very highly of the work that you do, man. Let everyone know where they can find the work that you do.
You can find me at Antwan Staley, all social media platforms, at Instagram, all that stuff. Also find my work at the at nydailynews.com and New York Daily News there. And we're doing a lot of draft stuff too as well, in addition to the Jets starting off their off-season program next week. So you can follow my work there too.
And if anyone has wing questions, as far as in New York or in North Carolina, I would
Or
ask Antwan
anywhere.
about
Or
them.
anywhere. Like I've
Or
been everywhere.
anywhere.
So
Is that like what you do? Like if you go, like, a lot of people buy like shot glasses or something if they travel to a new city. You make sure you find the best wings in that city.
depends on where I am, but yeah, like
Yeah.
I'll get the shot glasses too. But yeah, like I
Yeah.
usually like, yeah, what a wing spots at. So yeah, I usually know by now, especially NFL cities, because I usually been to a
Been
lot of
all of
them
them.
like more than once. But yeah, I definitely know where pretty much all the wing spots are.
I appreciate that about you too, man. I am a wing enthusiast myself. So see, man, we just connect on a lot of levels. I'm a big fan in
Oh,
general.
oh yeah, man. Like it was definitely fun being alone with you. Like it time went by so fast too.
No kidding, man. That was a half hour and it was like a 10-minute conversation, it felt like.
Right.
Well, look, we're gonna have a live stream on the draft. So maybe if if you're watching and you're covering it and you want to pop on for 5 minutes, we're gonna ask all of our guests or send a
Sure.
link to our guests if anyone wants to pop on and give a reaction to a pick, whether it's for a team or just one of the draft crushes. I'll send you that too, man, and maybe we could do this again.
All right, sounds good. Like, yeah, we'll
I
definitely
appreciate
talk
you,
in
man.
like 3 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you, Anton. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And with that, we will see you on the next episode of Draft Crush. Have a great day.